Okay, thanks for the introduction. So this is joint work with Peter Agassi, Juyong Lee, John Steinberger, and Stefano Tesaro. And so the talk will be about how to extend the key length of a block cipher, and more specifically about a more accurate analysis of this kind of schemes. So first, let me give you the context about key length extension. So I will first fix the notation that I will use. So a block cipher E takes a plain text X and a key K, and it outputs a ciphertext Y, and of course for each key, E key must be a permutation. So the main, you have some examples, DS, AES, ID, and the important thing here will be the notation that I will use throughout the talk, which is N will be the block length of the block cipher, and kappa will be the key length of the block cipher. Okay, so keep this in mind for the rest of the talk. So how do we formalize the security of a block cipher? So it should be a good pseudo-random permutation, which means that if we have an adversary, a distinguisher, which interacts either with the block cipher with a random key k, or with a perfectly random permutation, it shouldn't be able to distinguish these two cases, okay? And so this is captured by what we will call the strong pseudo-random permutation advantage. So strong here means that the adversary can make both plain text and ciphertext queries, right? And this is defined at the difference between the probability that it outputs one in one case and in the other case, okay? So this is the way that we formalize the security of a block cipher. So of course, you all know that key length is crucial because of a simple attack, which is exhaustive key search. More specifically, the key is recoverable in about 2 to the kp evaluations of the block cipher. So if you're given an oracle, which is either a random permutation or the block cipher with some key k, you can distinguish the two cases, and you can also recover the key, but you simply make one call to the oracle, and then you test exhaustively all keys. Okay, so this will take you about 2 to the kappa evaluations of E, and you will with a constant probability recover the key. And of course, this is also an upper bound on the PRP security of your block cipher. Okay, and this is a generic attack that applies to any block cipher. So for legacy block cipher with small key length, this is a huge problem. And so if you want to still use these old block ciphers like this, then you face the problem of how to extend the key lengths, the effective key lengths of your block cipher. So the problem that we have is to starting from some fixed block cipher to construct a new block cipher using this block cipher E as a black box with a larger key length. Okay, so we want the key length of our construction, kappa prime, to be larger than kappa, and we also want to gain something from this construction. So we want the best generic attack against our new construction to require strictly more than 2 to the kappa evaluations of the underlying block cipher and of the construction. Okay, so maybe the best known examples of this kind of schemes is triple encryption and also the FX construction, which is the generic variant of DES6. I will come back on this later. So in this work, we will work in the ideal cipher model, which means that we will model the underlying block cipher E as an ideal cipher, which means that we see this block cipher as a family of uniformly random permutations, independent for each key, and which is given as an oracle to all parties, including the adversary. Okay? And so this means that we are studying the generic security of our construction, okay? Because attacks cannot exploit any weakness of the underlying block cipher. So we only study generic attacks against this construction. Okay, so now how do we formalize the security of key length extension in the ideal cipher model? Well, we have a distinguisher as for the standard notion of pseudo-randomness, which can interact either with the construction with a random key or with a perfectly random permutation. But since we work in the ideal cipher model, the distinguisher also has access to the ideal cipher E that that the construction is using. Okay, so in this world here, the permutation is completely independent of the ideal cipher, whereas here it's slightly correlated. Okay, and so still for the notation, our distinguisher will be able to make QC construction queries, either to the construction or to the perfectly random permutation, and also QE ideal cipher queries to the underlying ideal cipher. Okay, so in some sense, this QC is the number of plain text ciphertext pairs that the adversary can intercept, and QE in some sense is it represents the offline computation of the adversary. Okay, and otherwise it is computationally unbounded. Okay, so this is an information theoretic notion. And one thing to keep in mind is that in this model, for any key-length extension scheme, there is always a generic attack which requires QE equals to 2 to the kappa plus n, where kappa is the block length, the key length, and n the block length of E. So this was for any key-length extension scheme, because this is simply the number of queries that you need to completely query the underlying ideal cipher. And once you have all these queries, you can search the key of the construction exhaustively. This will be for free because we are in the information theoretic setting. So in some sense, this is an artifact of the model that we are using. But this is the best we can hope to prove in this model. Okay? But if we take into account the time of the adversary, this can be higher than that. So most previous work has been studying these key-length extension schemes in a very particular setting, which means when the number of construction queries is 2 to the n, which means that the adversary has the full codebook of the construction. Okay, so in this setting, QE, the number of ideal cipher queries, is the only complexity measure. So the previous work somehow studied only this line here. But this is a bit too restrictive because sometimes you can limit the number of plain text and ciphertext pairs that the adversary can acquire by frequent rekeying, for example. And sometimes some mode of operations anyway impose that the number of that QC be much less than 2 to the n. So it makes sense to, in fact, study the entire plan, the entire possible parameters QC and QE. And this is what we aim to do in this paper, okay? To study the entire plan of the possible parameters. And for this, we have one main lemma that we apply repeatedly in the paper. So to explain it, I need to introduce the class of key-length extension schemes that we are studying. This is a very, very general class which has the following structure, and we call it a randomized key-length extension scheme. And this consists in alternatively applying some keyed permutation here, which might be much, much simpler than a block cipher. It might be just XORing some key, for example. And then applying the block cipher with some key derived from some master key K. So the key of the construction is in two parts. There is the part key that is used to call the block cipher, and there is some part D that will be used like whitening for whitening, for example. Okay. So this is the general structure that we are studying in this talk. And our main lemma allows to reduce the security of this scheme to the security of what we call the induced sequential cipher. So if in this scheme you assume that the key K is fixed and known, then the construction becomes a block cipher construction using independent public permutations P1 to PR, okay? And using only the key Z. And this is exactly what we call the induced sequential cipher of the construction, and we'll denote it C bar. So this structure here, it's really only the generalization of a key alternating cipher. With only in a key alternating cipher, you just XOR the key here, but here it might be a bit more complex, okay? But just a generalization. And what is good is that it's a well-studied design in the random permutation model, so we will be able to use a lot of previous literature to apply it to the security of key-length extension schemes, okay? And our main lemma allows to reduce the security of the key-length extension schemes to the security of the induced sequential cipher. So in fact, we have this relation here that the advantage of any adversary against the construction, the key-length extension scheme is less than this quantity here, plus the advantage of any adversary against the induced sequential cipher, okay? And this is parameterized by some parameter m, and if we are able to have a good upper bound on this quantity here, which will be easier because we work in a simpler model in some sense, then we can optimize this parameter and get a good bound on the security of the key-length extension scheme. Okay, and this is what we use to go the paper. So it's not, I don't have time to give the proof, but it's not very complicated. It's this quantity here is just the probability that when you draw a random key, there are more than m queries to any of the permutations P1 to PR. And assuming this is not happening, then the advantage of the adversary is just this quantity. It's quite straightforward. So first I will show how to apply it to what we call what is called randomized cascading, which is so the simplest scheme in this class is the FX construction, which is the generic variant of D6. And so starting from your block cipher E, you just add 2 extra whitening keys at the input and the output. This has been suggested by Ravest and analyzed by Kilian and Rogaray. And they showed that it's secure when the product of QC and QE is less than 2 to the kappa plus n. So if we draw it in the plan QC, QE, then this means that these parameters here are secure and these parameters here are insecure. Okay, and this is a tie bound. So this is one this is the only example where the security is completely understood for all parameters. And the same bound apply when using the same keys for the input and the output. So at Eurocrypt 2012, Ghazi and Tessao have introduced what they call the Tuxor construction, which is just the FX construction with an extra call to the block cipher. And they showed that when in the full codebook regime, when the adversary is given the entire codebook of the construction, then the construction is secure as long as Q is less than 2 to the kappa plus n over 2. So they prove that these parameters here are insecure and these parameters here are secure. So what we do in the paper is that we tightly complete the picture of the security of this construction. In particular, we show that for QC less than 2 to the n over 2, Tuxor has roughly the same security as the FX construction, whereas for QC larger than 2 to the n over 2, it's secure. The same bound as here applies. So these parameters here are, and there we give matching attacks. So we now have a complete picture of the security of the Tuxor construction. So the question now is, the construction is not very symmetric, and in particular, we could add an extra whitening step at the output. And the question is, what happens if we do this? Do we have the same security, or do we improve the security? And we prove that, in fact, this improves the security. And the way we prove this is using our main lemma, because if you consider this construction here, then the induced sequential cipher is exactly the 2-round even Monceau cipher with identical keys. And this has been analyzed at Crypto last year, so we can use this result to give a new bound for this, what we call this true XOR construction. And so if we apply our main lemma, we obtain this picture here. So when QC is less than 2 to the n over 4 or larger than 2 to the 3 n over 4, then the security is the same as for Tuxor. But between this, the security bound is better than for, so here this is the security for Tuxor and here for 3 XOR. So for this set of parameters here, we improve, adding a final whitening step, improve the security of the construction, okay? So about tightness, there is a generic attack against this construction that has been given by Ghazi, which is depicted here. So roughly the picture we get is that these parameters here are insecure. Below the security bound, these parameters are secure. And between the 2 lines, we don't know. This is an open problem, okay? So we believe that we can tighten the security bound up to the Ghazi's attack, but this is just a conjecture. we also show how to get a construction that does not need two different keys, because the problem with 2XOR and 3XOR is that you need two distinct keys to call your block cipher. So we also propose a construction that calls the block cipher twice with the same key. So in this case, you cannot apply the same whitening key 3 times. You need to derive a different key in the middle. I don't have time to go into the details, but we get roughly the same security bound as for the 3XOR construction. We also have results for what we call XOR cascade. By XOR cascade, I mean with independent whitening keys. So again, if you consider, so now we consider a larger number of runs than just 2, but with independent whitening keys. And if you consider the induced sequential cipher, then it's just the iterated even-Monceau cipher with independent keys. And this has been tightly analyzed by Chen and Steinberger at Eurocrypt last year. So again, we can use their result and give a new bound for this construction, XOR cascade, and which is again matched by Gazis attack. So we now have also a complete picture of this construction. And what it gives is that for R equals 1, this gives this security bound. This is just the FX construction. For R equals 2, you get a better bound, and as you increase the number of rounds, you get better and better bound, and asymptotically, as the number of rounds increases, you get an optimal bound. Okay, and this is tight for any number of rounds. So we now have a complete picture of this construction as well. So we also have analyzed what we call plain cascading. So plain cascading is just it's also called multiple encryption. So this just simply consists in encrypting L times with independent keys. Okay, so just apply your block cipher L times with independent keys. So it's well known that if you that double encryption doesn't help because of in the middle attack of Diffie and Hellman, and that you start gaining security from 3 rounds. Okay, this has been analyzed, for example, by Bellar and Rogaway. And this is called triple encryption, as it's used in triple DES, for example. Okay. And at Crypto last year, a tie bound has been given again in the full codebook regime when you have the entire codebook of the construction. Okay. And it has been shown that this is secure up to this number of ideal cipher queries. So we give a different analysis of plain cascade encryption. So we would like to apply our main lemma, but we can't directly because this is not a randomized construction. We don't have whitening steps in between the block cipher calls. So what we do, we apply some trick, which is that we use 2 independent ideal ciphers, E and E prime, okay, in an interleaved manner. And this is possible because we work in the ideal cipher model, and so we just have to randomly split the domain space, the key space, and so we can use 2. This is equivalent to using 2 independent ideal ciphers, and we make a gift to the adversary. We reveal the complete function table of E prime, and so now this becomes a randomized key length extension schemes with twice less runs. Okay. So we lose some runs, but now we can apply our main lemma. So we can study the security of the induced sequential cipher. And this is just a matter of generalizing the analysis of key alternating ciphers of Chen and Steinberger, but this is quite straightforward. And so we obtain these security bounds here. Okay, so maybe it's easier to see it on a picture. So for example, for triple encryption, what we get from these bounds here is that triple encryption is secure in this area here. So okay, so these 2 conditions here, you need to remove this zone, and this condition here gives you this bound here. Okay, but in fact, for when QC is larger than 2 to the n over 2, the Crypto 2004 bound applies, and it's so the final picture we have for triple encryption is this, okay? And this is almost tight everywhere except for, so we have matching attacks for almost for every parameters except for very small QC, where there is an unknown area for triple encryption. Okay, so to conclude, so in this paper we have given a thorough analysis of various key length extension schemes. So for FX it was already known, this is this curve. So for 2XOR we have a slightly better bound when QC is larger than 2 to the n/2. Then we have triple encryption, which is almost the same as 2XOR, in fact, except for small values of QC. Then we have the construction TWIXOR, which improves a bit over 2XOR, and we also have a tight analysis for 2-round XOR cascade encryption. Okay, and this is tight almost for every scheme except for the 3XOR scheme. So. In fact, our results seem to advocate in favor of randomized cascading, okay? Because, for example, triple encryption, which requires 3 calls to the underlayer block cipher, has similar security as the FX construction for QC smaller than 2 to the n/2, and as 2XOR, which requires only 2 calls to the underlying block cipher for QC between 2 to the n/2 and 2 to the n, okay? But there is a caveat, which is that this is in the ideal cipher model, which is information theoretic, so maybe this is not very accurate when you take into account the computation time of the adversary. And for example, for FX, it seems that it has some kind of computational issues. For example, at Eurocrypt that is coming, Dino will present a time memory data trade-off against FX. So maybe in other models, triple encryption is better than randomized cascading, or maybe not. But okay, take these results with the usual caveat that this is only in the ideal cipher model. Okay, that's all. Thanks for your attention.
Any questions? No questions. I have a question. So if you go to page 20, that you have when you show the graph that that it's not tight, and you said that you have a impression that you can tie.
20.
Yeah,
this one.
I think you had several 20s, but there's one which you can see that is not tight, and you have an impression that you can do that.
Okay, this one.
Yeah. So can you just explain why you think that you can do that, or any?
It's more a gut feeling. I don't have any concrete reason why it should be like this, but yeah, when you think about attacks, it seems hard to improve get this attack down to the security bound, whereas the security analysis, the security bound, it's really intricate to prove, and maybe it can be improved more easily than improving get this attack. So, but I don't have any formal arguments for this.
Okay. Any other questions for Yannick? Okay, so if you're not, let's thank him again.